Welcome in, Who Dat Nation. It's your boy Rev. It's my friend, my longtime companion Elias, and we're here to bring you a Week 1 victory recap. Because it doesn't matter how you get a dub, all that matters is that you got the dub. Elias, how you been, man? What'd you think?
It's about what I expected. Offense that is still trying to figure itself out. I thought
Yep.
Pete made some gutsy calls. It started off a little slow, but I think that just was everybody trying to settle down on offense. I thought Michael Thomas looked about as consistent as he could look, was still a good go-to receiver
Mm,
when the Saints needed some plays. I thought Olave, even though he started off slow, it's just kind of hard to contain him.
yeah.
He ended up, I think
100-yard
eight
game.
catches on 10 targets.
Yeah, 100-yard game.
Eventually, could have gotten a big pass interference there. I think that was a call that probably could have been called. Yeah, defense played well. I think there's a good mesh of good defense and a quarterback that, even though Carr threw the interception, we talked about it. Carr's like uh, late game prowess
Yeah.
is one of the best in the league, and I think that's a good mirror for what the defense is and what they're able to do. And then the offense just needs to make a play here. And that last play to Shaheed was huge from the play call being called, but also Carr putting the ball on target. Um, yeah, I think if they continue to play like that, they can win these types of close games where they lost so many of them last year.
Yeah, we'll go through our quarter by quarter, but I'd say the biggest thing for me that stands out in this game is not a player. And again, this is post game reaction. We don't have the film yet. This is what we saw. Honestly, the biggest thing I leave this game going is I knew who Dennis Allen was defensively. I know who Honey Badger is. I knew who Cam is, DeMario. I'm not saying I don't like what Carl Granderson showed. He's definitely playing with a chip on his shoulder. But the person I leave most excited about, even though it wasn't perfect, was Pete Carmichael. Specifically because of his ability and actually going with his gut, as he says, to be decisive and make some aggressive calls. Because my initial worry, just as the end game as an example, was 2-minute drill. They're going to just try to run it 3 straight times. They're going to fail, and they're going to give the ball back with 1:30 back to Tennessee. That would have been a Pete Carmichael play call last year. And this year, goes for a big one, takes the shot. Great throw by Carr to make it happen. But yeah, I mean, to your point, start off rough. Who dat to all those coming into the channel, celebrating our win. Rashid Shaheed, I'm glad that they didn't give up on him because you and I both know, having when we were in the podcast most of our time with Peyton would have benched this man. Done. You're not seeing another
Yep,
snap in the game. So appreciate
yep,
Carmichael
yep.
and Allen not doing that. In fact, going as far as to letting him make the call to bring out the kicks and letting him continue to do that in the second half. He finally found some room. But man, that fumble at the very beginning was my first thought was, damn, back to 2016 where special teams is going to be what ends up killing us and causing us to lose games. But that was a tough start, man.
Yeah, such a Saints way to start the game, but to kind of to speak to what you mentioned. I think, listen, Dennis Allen said it. They feel very confident with Carr at
Mhm.
quarterback. Perhaps he didn't have that level of confidence with the quarterback carousel that they had last year to actually trust himself, call
Yeah.
certain plays. We know that they like to call 2 plays in the huddle. Carr is, one of his specialties that's been talked about is, pre-snap and being able to get in and out of the right play. Seemed like you saw a lot more of that today. So giving Pete that flexibility to be able to call multiple plays, trust the quarterback to actually make the right call. I think you saw some comfort level there. You saw some trust very early on between he and Carr there, and hopefully continue to build upon that as the season progresses.
My big notes in the first quarter, obviously going to be a lot of defensive centric here. Not only in the first, they actually do this in the second as well. New Orleans did not allow a third down conversion by the Tennessee
Yes.
Titans. That was huge. In fact, Tennessee ends up completing and finishing the game with 2 for 12 on what, in my opinion, should have been a flawless victory. But in the second half, they got a little bit of lax. But you end up not allowing a third down there. First half, you end up giving up that fumble, and it is a false start, which that's going to be across the league. You're going to see a lot of those penalties as people get acclimated to the season bet. But then you had 2 straight, an incomplete. Then you had that Ryan Tannehill trying to make some movement where he should have been kind of sacked, holding penalty, and then another incomplete pass, which the pass defense was absolutely phenomenal today. And you kind of saw that starting early before we'd actually get 3 interceptions. But first quarter is really the name of the game was this defense coming out, and I was really surprised with how stout they were. Not that the
Mhm.
Saints defense has started off bad the past couple of years, but they've definitely started off not to the degree of what they end up as. And I think last year that was because the safeties were new, hadn't adjusted the DA
Mhm.
system yet. This year you can definitely tell that everybody that was playing their position knew their position, was all fundamentally ready to come out against in my opinion, underrated Titans offense. I'm not really big on Tannehill, but
Uh,
you know, people are going to leave this week one going, D Hop's finished. I don't really think that's the case. I think Hopkins goes on to have a good year in Tennessee this year. But man, if you had watched him, you're watching Paulson Debo and Marshawn Lattimore, et cetera, eat his lunch. That just kind of speaks to where this defense is able to be at now in terms of coverage because they are a little bit more confident in front of their defensive line. They have a better fundamental play. And I think a lot of it goes back to the run stopping as well, which they did a pretty good job of in the first quarter.
I thought the if I came out with a big strength of this defense, it is the defensive line. The rotation was thick. Unfortunately, Peyton Turner goes down with what looks to be a foot injury
Yeah.
very early on, but they got a little bit of help in the beginning because the what call was it that took Henry out of the game? They didn't even run him for the first series. They seemed kind of bent on getting their rookie running back a lot of touches
Yeah,
too, maybe
Tajay.
keeping Henry, yeah, maybe keeping Henry, kind of fresh, so maybe they can run him late on. So I thought that was pretty interesting that Tennessee didn't try to run him down our throats.
Yeah.
I expected Tannehill to maybe use his legs a little bit more. I thought when going into the game that Tennessee was the type of offense that maybe could convert a lot of third downs and wear our kind of our elder defense out. There's a lot of key players on that that are close to 30 years old or above, and the third down, I am completely, excited about the fact that we only allowed two third down conversions,
And
which was
didn't
really
allow those to
big.
the fourth quarter, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
so and 2 for 12, 17%. I mean, you are ecstatic if you're a Saints fan seeing those percentages start
absolutely.
off. And I'll even say that to a degree, you should be very excited about the offense's third down because they were 44%. The one negative to kind of pull into that, and just to go ahead and give credence a little bit to all the Derek Carr detractors, they weren't very successful in the red zone. 1 for 4. Now, one game, but that was one thing that people wanted to hammer about Derek Carr coming to New Orleans is he's going to fail you in the red zone. I don't think that all the looks were bad. I think penalties end up killing them more than anything in some of those spots. But place to clean up, and that was actually you noticed that in that first half because obviously the Saints did not score a touchdown in the first half, but there was opportunity to score in
Mhm.
that first half. So those are things that have got to get cleaned up. And as they go into that second quarter, where you end up having another battle of field goals, where Nick Folk had one, you had Groupie had one. Which shout out to Groupie coming in and hitting all of his shots, especially going toe to toe with the veteran and Folk. Really,
Yeah.
happy that he was able to show at least for one game that trade is currently not hurting the Saints having the young guy come in and start at kicker. And also give a little bit of credit since you end up seeing a lot of punting early on. Honestly, both of the new guys look pretty good.
Play well. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think special teams looked like it'd be a little shaky early, but those two players I think played a pretty significant part. Groupie, you want to. It's interesting, right? You want to see the offense score touchdowns, but if you wanted to get a really good look at Groupie and see if he can play under the lights and deal
Yeah.
with the pressure, you got a great look at him because of the offense faltering the way it did. So a little bit of a catch 22 there, but you're excited about both he um and our punter. I think I read where it's like it's interesting. His net yardage, it doesn't matter how you get it.
Hmm.
But there wasn't a lot of yardage return there. I mean, it wasn't
Yep.
like he was booming Morstead type punts, but with the way he punted and pinning things to the sideline, beautiful tackle by I think Lonnie Johnson Jr. at some point because of a sideline punt where I'm ecstatic about special teams not being a crutch at this point
Yeah.
where it could have been that considering how much movement you had and even not having special teams stand out JT Gray even in the game. So I think special teams played very, very well to keep that game, defense and special teams to keep it until the offense was able to find its footing later on in the game.
Yeah, he ended up Headley ended up punting today 5 times, 48.2 average, which is pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
a couple really big booming punts. He had one that went from about the Saints 25 to the opposite side of the field, about equal distance, which was really good for the Saints to kind of flip, especially when they were playing such a defensive game. That was good to see. What else besides the emergence of Michael Thomas? Good to see him early. I thought was really good. And I would say in terms of separation, one thing I noticed definitely used him a lot of clear outs. They didn't use
Mhm.
him as the hot read near as much. And I think it's clear that it seems to be, depending on how they do this game by game, obviously things will change. But Chris Olave is definitely the number one here. Most of the hot reads were Olave. He was the primary target on a lot of some of these designs. But you still saw Thomas have 5 receptions, 61 yards, including one right there in the fourth in a crunch time situation, getting an 8-yard catch on that 3rd and 14 to set up New Orleans in a position where they at least had more options of what they wanted to do, trying to seal that game away. So it was also nice to see Michael Thomas back. I didn't see a level of like dominance from Thomas, but I definitely saw a very, very good contribution. And you're going, I mean, 5 for 61, you'll take that because that was a stat line that he would have on an off day back in the day.
Yeah, he's at this point, based on especially what you got from Olave last year, and you expecting him to, take a second love. Listen, Thomas is complimentary at this point, and that's all he needs to be. And the fact that his mental focus is on being that player versus trying to be Michael Thomas from 3 years ago, I
Yeah.
think is very important to the overall schematic of how this team needs to play, especially at the wide receiver position. Yeah, I think. Listen, Thomas, I saw where they mentioned he's not necessarily comfortable. Like I think 3 years ago, you would have saw Michael Thomas run like a whip route, right?
Hmm.
Goes in hard cut, comes back out. He's not quite yet comfortable
Yeah.
making those type of cuts. So you're seeing not necessarily a lot of linear things, but just listen, he's still gonna win. He's still big, he's still physical. He can still outpower guys. So you let him make one cut, go catch the ball. The hands are still there.
Yeah.
The hands are still sure. The contested catch ability is still there. So I mean, complimentary wise, Thomas is right where you want to be, and also still with the ability to continue to develop and get his feet underneath him as the season progresses so that if Olave doesn't have a big game, you also know that you have Thomas who's still a reliable target.
I did notice starting in the second, especially in the second half, though, but starting, you can kind of see this trend moving in the second quarter. The first quarter, for those who like to pay attention to positional groups, we did see Jimmy Graham on the field. They clearly want to come out and attack through the passing game, the seams, and that's one of the reasons you end up seeing Carr got sacked 4 times in the first half. And then you saw Pete Carmichael make an adjustment after halftime, which basically took tight ends out of the game as receivers, and they were being used a lot, whether the running back or the tight end, to chip to help out Trevor Penning on that left side. And I think that's one of the reasons that Juwan Johnson only has 3 catches. You don't see Foster Moreau with anything on the stat line. And Jimmy Graham went to making appearances to really not being on the field. So a big thing is going to come down to as they move forward. One, how does Penning improve from this? I do think, though, that he's going against a very good defensive line who very well coached here, the front seven with Vrabel. I think is going to be one of the tougher units that you on paper face going through the season. And I'm confident that you're not going to see Penning have as much struggles in every game as you did this one. But still, that definitely changed the offense where they had to get rid of, and what a lot of times historically has been one of Derek Carr's favorite positions, and rely on the receiving group, who thankfully now is a much better receiving group than what we had, say 2 years ago.
Mhm. Yeah, it was a good chance. Again, it's like how you got a chance to see Groupie. It was a good chance to see the offense make adjustments. Everybody's put a lot of weight on Carmichael's shoulders to improve on what he did last year. And people could see Penning getting beat. The announcers talked about it.
Yeah.
They made the adjustment that they needed to make to be able to get the offense going and doing what it needed to do. Um, listen, Penning is Arden, listen, I think Arden Key was somebody that the Titans were excited about. He's really become the kind of he's come on as a defensive edge player over the last year or
He
so,
fits
and
them
that's why the
really
Titans
well
went in and
too.
picked him up, right?
Yeah.
So he's a ascending player as what would have been called. And so listen, Penning got a good test, but he's also a guy that just needs reps. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
get too down on him. Again, you needed to see the adjustment. Hey, get the rookie some help. They got the rookie some help. They settled down a bit. I'm still really really impressed with uh, the fact that Jeffrey Simmons didn't have a really big impact on the game via Cesar Ruiz, who is a player that has steadily improved over the years after being somewhat of a whipping boy by the fans and opposing players for some time. So I think,
Yeah.
listen, as long as the offensive line stays healthy, And Penning continues to get snaps and continues to improve. I think that if you give Carr some time, he's got some mobility, but Carr can really throw some pinpoint balls. He can
Again,
he can throw some darts, especially to that sideline that maybe you didn't see with Drew in his elder days. And so, listen, the offense has a chance to really expand as the season grows. I don't think this was the best effort. I don't think this is anything close to the best effort. But it was great to see Carmichael make the adjustments and also trust his gut and make some really really ballsy calls there late.
first time that Cameron Jordan has had a sack in week one since 2019. Now, he
Well,
only gets credit with a half, but still a sack's a sack. And old man still got it, clearly.
what he had with three batted balls. I mean, a
Yeah,
half sack, three batted balls at this stage. He might get a chance to get double digit, not only sacks but double digit batted passes.
yeah,
But listen, it helps when it had been a while since I've seen Dennis Allen feel comfortable enough to play four-man rushes a lot. We know that Dennis likes to kind of do a three-man rush, drop the linebackers. They ran a good amount of four-man rushes, and as
yeah.
Cam Jordan alluded to in the interview, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, if you have a four-man rush, maybe they can't double team the ends a lot more. I thought Brzee kind of looked. Listen, if he doesn't jump on one of those plays, I think Brzee probably finishes with a sack and a half um,
He
for
had some
his
really
debut.
good interior rushes. I mean,
Yeah.
especially, I'm going to be very curious to see the snap count. He probably
Uh-huh.
only was in maybe 30% of the snaps,
Hmm.
at least from the eyeball test, but he did enough to what you want from a rookie, which is flash, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah,
definitely has some
yeah.
good interior flashes, and because I think the goal is to have Nate Shepard kind of be that starter, but eventually, if he
Yep.
works into it, you're going to see Breezy end up taking that and being the guy halfway through the season, and he's going to be there,
Yep.
50, 60% of the snaps if he's really popping off. So that was actually really good to see. But the biggest name on the D line that deserves love is the man who I think has a hell of a chip on his shoulder for many reasons,
Malcolm
but
Roach.
oh, okay, Roach too, but I had to call out Granderson because you've tried to draft his replacement multiple times the past
Yeah,
couple
yeah.
years, and Granderson came out with not only a sack and a half, four QB hits, and several pressures around the defensive line that they got to benefit from, and a couple of the interceptions at which we haven't even got to bring up the interceptions because this really was a defensively fantastic game, first half, second half.
Yeah, yeah.
But what Granderson was doing at the front with Cameron Jordan, by the way, is one of the
Hmm.
reasons that you're able to play that style of aggression for DA. And the reason I can tell you it's a different style is look in the fourth quarter. You see Alontae Taylor playing the ball, even in a
Yeah.
situation where you probably play the man. New Orleans is willing to be more aggressive because they trust in their front four. So, because of that, you don't have as much hip to hip coverage because they are willing to make plays on the ball. And that's why you end up with 3 interceptions. That is because you're confident in guys like Carl Granderson.
The rush was there. For a couple of years now, we've felt like, hey, the pass rush hasn't been there. Again, you would like to see Turner be a part of that rotation.
Yeah,
You get the injury early on. Hopefully, it's nothing too big. But listen, the pass rush was there, and if the pass rush is there, as we pointed out, you get more eyes on the ball. More eyes on the ball equals chances for more turnovers. You got one from both outside cornerbacks.
did. Yep.
Um, then you get one from your safety. Beautiful play on the batted ball. Arguably on Yidium, it could have been a pass interference, but hey, we had a pass interference that wasn't called either on that end. So you come away with a good, that's three turnovers. Potentially could have been more. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore did drop
He did
an
drop one.
interception at one point with a beautiful break on the ball. Listen, secondary is there. The defensive line is there. As long as the offense can kind of play off those
Hey,
guys and keep them from wearing like
we got to throw
enormous
in
amount
that
of snaps.
linebacker group too, man. The linebackers, because remember, we only played two.
Yeah, yeah,
18
yeah.
total tackles, half sack, QB hit, and TFL combined between Davis and Warner. So shout out to them.
Dynamic duo,
Yeah,
Batman and Robin. The only thing you worry about with them is the depth there, right?
yeah.
Defensive line, you saw the rotation. That we've got a strong rotation on the defensive line. You feel good about the depth. The secondary, you've got good secondary. Ugo Amadi
Hmm.
came in for a couple of plays for Taylor. He almost ended up with an
He
interception.
did. Yeah.
if Hopkins doesn't turn into a defender on that play. So you can see somewhat of the depth in the secondary. You just kind of worry about if anything happens at the linebacker position. But Demario and and Warner, they kind of make that entire thing go. You feel confident. So the defense is the defense has been built in DA's image. He's been a heck of a builder. I thought the play calls were good. There were no uh I've always worried about them like wetting the bed
Yeah.
in the most inopportune moments. You did not see that
You didn't.
this game.
You
So
you also only had, and I say only, but 7 penalties. You understand coming into the early games, there's going to be procedural penalties where not
yeah.
everybody's there, especially false starts, delay of games. I'll take 7 penalties for only
Mhm.
45 yards because the big one is the yardage thing. And you
Yeah.
did have one
In the
pass
yardage.
interference by May, which was a spot foul in our red zone, but you didn't have this 30-yard down the field grabbing, DPI. You didn't have a lot of you didn't have a roughing the passer penalty really, like they actually ended up having where Carr gets hit in the face. You had a pretty fundamentally sound team that just had a couple little issues here and there that should be easy to clean up. None of the fouls were the crap. Here's a guy just going to consistently struggle with this again. So that was big. I think the only thing I would change, this goes back to the run game just not having much success, is Saints didn't win the turnover or they didn't win the time possession battle.
Yeah.
And I think overall, there's a reason that you try to have that as one of your goals on your bulletin board. You do want to kind of, take control of that. But when you're playing a team that has Derrick Henry and they're going to lean on him heavy, and hell, I think the Saints just really shows how well they're doing defensively because in a game that was 16-15, if I told you that score prior, you're going to assume Derrick Henry ran the ball 25, 30 times. He only ran it 15 times because
Yep.
New Orleans was putting the Titans in such disadvantageous positions. They simply couldn't make that type of movement. And also, shout out to the defense because how often can we say in today's modern NFL that you hold an NFL quarterback below 200 yards passing and below 50% completion rate? Absolutely fantastic.
Give me a grade on because I think the biggest thing is that people have been down on Dennis Allen. All
Yeah.
right, you've been down on Carmichael. Give me a coaching grade this game. How do you feel like
Oh,
both coaches handled the game?
I would say DA gets an A. And I mean, just
Okay,
how he managed this game. One, the
okay,
pedal never got taken off in terms of aggressiveness late, offensively or
uh huh,
defensively. I think you saw clear halftime adjustments. And while this team
hmm
did not play perfect, they stuck to their
hmm
game plan and they, one, trusted in Derek Carr, including
yeah,
after. The biggest example I give is kind of what we joked about earlier. Rashid Shaheed fumbles play one, Sean Payton error, he's on the bench. Even if he only is on the bench for a quarter, there's going to be a yap there. DA took it in stride. His defense in that drive, by the way, it's hilarious because if you look at the
yeah.
scoring drive, they actually scored a field goal when they lost 8 yards. Like the amount of yards the Titans got in that first drive was -8. And I have to, for one game, everybody's going to start crucifying me. For one game, this is definitely an A grade for DA. And hopefully, this is what you see from him moving forward. He talked about, last year, the things that he needed to be better was be more aggressive and to actually trust in his guys more. And he did that today. As far as Carmichael goes, look, I don't think it was perfect. If it was perfect, then you wouldn't have only scored 16 points. But as a whole, Carmichael showed a level of aggression that he did not stick with last year. And he didn't have a lot of predictability, which is big. My biggest complaint last year for Carmichael was situational football. And this time didn't have that issue. Now, he didn't really have to play from behind very much, which is usually where you see those limiting factors and how do you address those. But overall, I think Carmichael gets a solid B for this game. No, it wasn't perfect. I think there's some opportunities that he missed. I personally didn't like that it took about, 5 drives to see Taysom Hill touch the football. I think that
Ah,
you needed to
yeah.
see that happen a little bit earlier, especially when you saw some obvious stall with Jamal Williams. I mean, it was very clear they were stacking the A and B gaps, and you were just not getting any movement there. So you needed to find ways around that. You needed to spread the field. Without Alvin Kamara to run that outside zone, they started doing it with Sharif Shaheed, started doing a little bit with Taysom Hill. I think that could have come in earlier, and that would have spread the defense out a little bit more. But again, overall, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is Pete Carmichael on these third and fours is calling 50-yard, seam routes and stuff. And he's
Mhm.
being aggressive where you're expecting something and he's hitting you with something different. That, I think, is what good coaching does. So he gets a positive grade for me, too.
A for Dennis Michael, and that will. Dennis
Michael,
Allen.
yeah, both of
Yeah.
them. Either way, I mean, you got to win. So you can't say too many negatives, but there's definitely a lot to clean up, right? I mean, offensive line definitely has some cleanup to do. It's clear Michael Thomas isn't 100%. Like, hopefully it's just rust. I do think he's contributing, but he's certainly not dominating. Would love to see him continue to improve. Tight end room, we're really excited about. Didn't get to see much from them, and you're missing the two running backs that this style of run really is based off of. So that's kind of a tricky point too. But yeah, I mean, and the only thing I can't really say is defensively. There's not much I can say defensively do better. I mean, we'll see next week against Carolina, who, by the way, lost today. But yeah, fantastic run.
Who stood out? So you give me two players that stood out on offense, two players that stood out on defense.
Player that's definitely always going to stand out, I think, at this point is Chris Olave. That's why I'm so confident in him as a number one. And the fact that just key moments he comes in, 80% catching on his targets, 112 yards. That was big for me. But also, look, it's cliche. I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care. It's my show. Derek Carr. I don't care. Derek Carr. It's cliche, but it's just how it is, man. Like, the guy came out through 70%, 69.7 if y'all want to be picky, 305 yards. And after a rough first half where he took 4 sacks and threw an interception, his second half was immaculate. So, Derek Carr. Now, hopefully he does that more, and it's 3 TDs to only 1 TD that he throws. But still, I didn't expect him to have 300 yards passing. I said that I expected him to be around that 250 mark. I mean, I expected this to be a slower pace game, but he managed to find the big ones. And shout out to Carmichael for making those play calls, because I still believe that there's another 50 yards that needs to get tacked on for that Chris Olave pass interference. So, yeah, Derek Carr did what he needed to do. Did Derek Carr look like a top 3 quarterback in the NFL? Definitely not. And I'm sure when we get to the All-22, we'll see some missed ops. But overall, those two stood out, and I think they're a big reason you won this game.
Yeah, I don't think the Saints need him to be
I
a
don't
top
either. Not
five
when this
quarterback.
defense is playing like they are right now.
Yeah, yeah. You just need someone who I the offense stalled a couple of times, but it still looked like it was managed fine
Yeah.
under Derek Carr. The fact that they felt good enough about him to go in with a game plan that was, yeah, to me, that was a very breeze-like game plan. Listen, we're not going to try to run the ball on that defensive front. We're going to use the quick pass game. We're going to use the pass game. I mean, heck, for I would say almost a good third of the, maybe 2/3 of the first quarter, you really only had one run with Jamal Williams. The rest of it was just a lot of passes from Derek Carr. And I think again, you wanted to see some chemistry develop there, but I think the confidence that this DA feels like they got the right guy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You had last year where there was an opportunity to get Deshaun Watson, or Sean Watson. You miss out on that. But I feel like Derek Carr is the right guy for what they want to do. His skill set fits. Again, you don't expect him to be a top, 5 quarterback. But even if he's only top 12, that's better than what they had last year after him. What I think he's the 6th starting quarterback since Drew retired, which is a lot of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's some high numbers. So to get some consistency there and some stability, and then to continue to build around him as a quarterback, he's still the best quarterback in the division. I don't think you have to argue about that, or we'll just say he's the most
I don't know,
experienced
man. You're going to have to
quarterback
hear
in the
from
division.
Tampa Bay fans this week, because Baker Mayfield went out there, helped win a game against Kirk Cousins. So
Yeah, I mean,
he didn't do
yeah,
great, but I mean, he was there. So
I'm fine. Listen, I'm fine with that. They're both. We'll just say he's the most experienced
yeah,
quarterback of the bunch, and I'll take that for a team that is built around a lot of veteran players. They have high expectations, and they don't have much wiggle room for you know I would like to think, like, not necessarily dumb mistakes, but they don't have a lot of. It's a veteran team that knows where it needs to go,
yeah.
knows how it needs to get there, and you needed somebody like Carr to come in, and I think he played very well. What about the defensive side? I think you already gave one.
Oh.
I
I mean,
I
Granderson
thought,
definitely. I mean, it's tough when you do this because, and by the way, chat, we're gonna get to some of y'all's comments here in a second, because I know we're kind of talking positive about the offense, but it's not all there. But it's definitely, you see all the pieces. You just got to get put together the puzzle. But Carl Granderson, I mean, I want to give it to Cameron Jordan because he made so many key plays, but at this point, like you have Hall of Fame expectations for Cameron Jordan. You don't
Mm.
have that for Carl Granderson. So when he steps up and has such a great premiere like he did today, I think he deserves some credit. And I'll be honest, I think Alontae Taylor deserves a little bit more love for how he's performing in the nickel with it being his first job because a lot of people coming in, Saints fans, are just like, man, he needs to play on the boundary. This is where he's better. I don't trust him in the nickel. And I thought Alontae Taylor played well in the nickel. I mean, did he look perfect? No.
No.
First off, how many nickel corners can you name in the past 20 years that are just all pros and everybody loves them? And probably the only name you're going to grab is Chris Harris and just about nobody else. I mean, Chauncey has made his career out of being a mixed free safety
Primarily,
nickel
yeah.
guy. And guess what? He didn't look all that great week one either. He looked good, but not amazing. And I think Alontae Taylor came in and had that type of day. You weren't able to just, because I don't know if y'all remember. I mean, I know we're kind of like a quick recap here, but Tennessee was moving DeAndre Hopkins everywhere, boundary,
Yeah,
flanker,
yeah.
inside. They were trying desperately to get him snaps, and they did not use Lattimore to follow. They said, let him line up wherever you want, which is why you ended up seeing him against Alontae Taylor, who got a PBU on Hopkins, which is why he was against Adebo, who got a pick on him, why he was against Lattimore, who got a pick on him. I think Taylor had a solid job from the slot, and the more reps he has, similar to what you're hoping from Penning, though he definitely performed better in week one than Penning did,
Right.
he's
Right.
going to get better at that. And I think that he deserves some recognition because one, I feel like people didn't give him enough respect for owning into that nickel spot. And
Mhm.
two, I feel like he's kind of underrated there where Adebo has taken that starting outside job. And by the way, showed today why he took it. But Alontae Taylor also looking really good on the field and showing that he's very versatile.
Yeah, best three defense or best three cornerbacks, and I think one of the stronger tackles that a deep that well Alante made was, I think it was a quick play into the flats and he held on to the jersey. And, easily that could have turned into a 10-12 yarder, and I think
Well, hell, his
he's
play
got
on Derrick Henry was just tremendous.
yeah.
Was he able to purposely or personally make the tackle? No, because Derrick Henry's got about 50 pounds on him. But he
On
did
him.
enough
Yeah.
to hold him back so that Demario could come clean it up. I mean, that type of play in the nickel is what made Chauncey so damn good. Why Chauncey threw a fit and why he got sent to Philly, because Chauncey's like, look how freaking good I am. I can play multiple positions. Alontae's doing the same thing, just hopefully without the locker room part. So
Yeah, I mean, this is why they felt comfortable with letting Roby go. I mean, he's got the coverage skills of Roby as a corner, but
yeah,
much more size and much more tackling ability, much more aggressiveness and physicality there than what you would have gotten out of Roby. So he gives you kind of a nice mix with the best of both worlds. I won't say he's that of a striker that Chauncey Gardner Johnson is, which I mean, he can be, but Chauncey is just a little bit thicker, a
he
little
is.
bit stouter
Yeah.
in that area. But Taylor does still give you the coverage ability you want from there, but also in the run support, I thought he showed well.
Charles, appreciate you, man. Says, I love what I saw from Marcus May. I love the comeback grip from Shaheed. Penning needs some milk. Ugly, but glad for victory. I do want to throw in one thing, man. I do believe that by the halfway point in this season, I don't know what these teams look like in the second half. But the first
Mhm.
half, you're going to see both of these teams being top 10 defenses statistically.
Yeah.
I just think they
Mhm.
are. So you had a really tough matchup to kind of come out here, especially missing your arguably best offensive player, or at least your most versatile offensive player in Kamara. Missing that's going to really impact you. Thankfully, you're only
Yep.
missing him for 3 games. But yeah, Penning definitely has to improve. I do think that May certainly looked much better than
He looked
he did to
healthy.
start last year. Yeah, looked healthy.
He looked healthy.
And again, I can't speak highly enough for not only Shaheed, but honestly for Dennis Allen for not just coming down with the hammer on Shaheed on that first play fumble, and then Shaheed coming through and not only redeeming himself, being a really key part of why this team was able to win this game.
Yeah, he could have. I mean, arguably, we joked about it. Sean would have at least sat him for a series, and
If
he would
he
have
definitely
chewed
would
him
have not
out.
have been returning kicks that next
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Definitely not.
yeah. And the fact that they not only still allowed him, but they still gave him the green light. You saw him come out a bunch of times, and the announcers questioned some of the times he came out. But overall, he had some pretty good returns, and still having that ability. So I think Da showed the type of confidence, because a lot of times Sean Payton would call plays the guys to kind of build up their confidence, or he'll go back to them. So I think you see some of the carryover. But listen, for a team that had, you have to know that there was some adversity there to overcome, especially at
Yeah.
half, right? You've got a number of turnovers there early on to start out with. There was significant amounts of adversity. The game wasn't going the way that you wanted to go, and they fought through it. Um, Diaz continued to show that the players have a lot more confidence in him than the fans do. And I think that's obviously the most important part of the deal. As long as the players continue to play for him, but they fought through
Yeah.
penalties. They fought through some questionable things. We had a couple of things that bounced our way. Again, you got to give Groupie some Groupie love there, coming through with the field goals. I think we either surpassed the record for most field goals
Yeah. In a
in
week one game.
a
Yeah.
week one game. So listen, total team effort. You get the win. You clean up some things. And you come out and you see if you can improve in week two. But this looks like a team that we expect them to look like when they have a quarterback under center that they trust.
Edwin says the offense can only go up from here, especially considering AK will be coming back in October.
Yeah.
I do think that. And usually when we say that, we're talking really negatively of the offense. I think week one, it's the same argument that I made last year. It's like, hey, this defense is going to be great. They're not going to come out great. New pieces, needs adjustment, needs time. Timing's the thing. Hell, you saw it with the Titans where one of the interceptions that Tannehill threw, he's clearly expecting a back shoulder to
Yeah.
hop, and it's not there. So that's going to be a thing with the fact that Carr has never played with Juwan Johnson and Olave. And if y'all remember, they only had one drive in preseason. That was a touchdown throw to Kirkwood, of all people. So I think all those things are going to take time as well. And just give you the dirty, ugly truth, that usually takes up to 2 months for a new team led by a new unit to find their cohesion. So I think that you are going to see them move up. But the real key for me is look at the actual scoring drives. Like first one, 9 plays, right at 70 yards. You only end up with a field goal, but that shows consistent success. You're
I
able
like
to
that.
move
Yeah.
the football. You look at, in the second half, you had 7 plays for 60 yards. You had 5 for 33. And a couple of the ones that didn't score, you still had 6, 7 plays in a drive, which means that you weren't getting stopped on immediate third downs. You weren't having 3 and outs. And this goes back to them being 7 for 16 on third downs. There's a lot more positive in the only scored 16 than there is negative, but let's just be real. If you average scoring less than 20 points a game throughout the season as an offense, you're going to be a losing football team. So they certainly have to improve.
No, and I think they will. I think the biggest thing is, and you pointed it out, they did not have a lot of time on task together. You're missing a
Yeah.
key offensive piece. He's new. He and Carmichael have to continue to develop a relationship. Um, Listen, that's what I expect out of. Listen, week one is arguably, especially with now only playing, 3 preseason games.
Mm-hmm.
Week one is arguably preseason week game 4 when you're trying to determine what guys do what well, how well they play, where guys. So you're gonna see some miscommunications, and you saw that. There's still some developing going on. Sean Payton was famous for having wide receivers that we weren't going to see on the roster week 8 or week 9 playing in the slot, and we're wondering why that receiver is playing in the slot. So a lot of teams are still trying to figure out things early on, and they figured it out enough to get a win when they
Yeah.
needed to. So yeah, I think they'll be fine moving forward. I would love to see the offense continue to morph with Derek Carr at quarterback.
Aaron says, can't believe all that firepower. Had such a dismal first half. Had Carr looking like Winston holding the ball, but it was a good save in the end. Again, one, I want to give credit to Tennessee's defense for being what they are. And two, I just think you're going to have some growing pains where, you
Yeah.
know, like I said, I won't be shocked once we get the all 22 in the morning, and I'll share it with Elias. We can watch it. And do not be shocked if we do some and Derek Carr missed a read or 3 or 4 reads. It's just the new team, new situation in game. That's going to happen. And the hope is that you have those plays that get cleaned up. There was one that I even thought, real quick, obvious note how Derek Carr is different. Derek Carr gets to change plays at the line of scrimmage more than just audibles. You saw actually happen in the second half. It wasn't something they were letting Andy Dalton do last year. So with all that trust, I think things are going to get improved. I still don't necessarily think that this is a 30-point-a-game offense, maybe, but I do think they can at least get to that 25, 26-point-a-game mark. And if that's what they're averaging with this defense, again, we just need them to be above average. Top 15, maybe a top 10 offensive unit. And this is a dangerous team come playoff time, but we got a long way to get there. And Aaron also adds Taysom's involvement early on was unacceptable. I think they waited too long to really get him the opportunities. Yeah, I mean, the first time we called him was him getting a tackle on a special teams play. So, kind of going back to his roots. I'm wondering if the thought from Carmichael there is they didn't want to jump into that too early, as in they wanted to give as many reps to Carr as possible to try to build that rhythm. That's why you
Hmm.
never saw any of it. But I will say that I still believe that he is one of the most effective X factors in the NFL. And anytime you have a couple of those stalls, you got to find something to him. Use him as a Y leak him out from the tight end, backside, get him a quick pass, get him some yards after catch, use him in the run game, whatever you got to do. But I do think that that's something they should definitely improve on and work on as you get more time. At least that's the hope, right?
Yeah, we could. There's a lot of things to nitpick, but how about this? To say what Carr put up over 300 yards, he had an interception, but can we Drew Brees first game, Cleveland, 2006. Threw
Yep.
from might have thrown for 150 yards. New offense, new team, still learning. Might have thrown for 150 yards. I think. Listen, for what it was, could it have been better? Absolutely. But I mean, he still threw for 300 yards. Does he need to do better in the red zone? Yeah, we got to score more points there. But there's a lot to build on. There's a lot to correct. There's a lot of improvement there. Maybe if Penning isn't getting bull rush, swam through, setting wrong, not getting enough depth, all of these things, maybe Carr doesn't feel so ants in the pocket at some point. There's a lot of stuff that you can see improve that leads to this offense being able to put up 20 plus points, and the defense looks like it's in prime mode where it's going to be holding teams maybe 20 points and below. So offense just needs to be good enough, and I think this is an offense that can be better than good enough in the long run. So yeah.
Real quick on Carr, last year, remember, context is always huge. Last year, he had
Uh-huh.
2 games the entire season, to keep in mind that he got benched the final 2 games. 2 games the entire season where he threw over 300 yards.
Uh-huh.
2. That's it. So the fact that that happened, by the way, when he did that last year between those 2 games, he was throwing about 61.5%. Today was on the cusp of a Drew Brees famous 70. So again, even though we didn't have all the TDs, you see the box score at least gives you the truth of the fit is there. Now you just need to
Yep. Yep.
execute better on
Yep.
certain plays. So very clearly he fits. Now we just got to make the execution better, and then that will take him to the next level. Also, Aaron gives a shout out saying on the Elias cameo, it is good. With the work schedule, I don't know if the week ones can line up as much, but I did tell Elias anytime he wants to come through our post game, I'm more than happy to have him, and I think it's great because him is my favorite years of the podcast. So
Yeah, I'll be here, man. I'll be here. I got my nice little office set up.
we're both getting
Yeah,
old
yeah.
because we both got standing desk.
Both got
Yeah.
standing desks like I.
Oh man,
Which
we
by
we started this. We were like in our 20s. Now we in our mid 30s and aging. Oh man.
which I might add, man, you've slimmed down quite a bit. You're looking pretty good though.
Well, thank you. I think the standing desk helps.
Ah,
Definitely got
touche,
to.
touche.
So yeah, man, we'll get a couple more from the chat. We'll wrap up. Remember, we will have our Tuesday. We'll try to look at some of the film notes. And Elias, if he is active in the Discord, he'll share some of his notes with you. I'm gonna send him some of the tape so we can enjoy this win together. Riches, I thought Taysom might get a block punt. He was close enough to try for it, but didn't want the penalty in case he missed. Possibly, Richard. I do want to give a little bit of quick love to Zach Baum though. And I've been
Yeah,
saying it all
yeah.
off season, and people hate it because he's a 3rd-round draft pick. I'm like, well, why is he on the roster? He doesn't start. That's why he's on the
Special
roster.
teams.
Uh, he-
Special teams.
I mean, the fact that he got even without the block punt, he's one of the best special teams tacklers they got, Mike Tyson. But getting a block punt definitely gives that affirmation that you're looking for, right?
I mean, hey, listen, Stephon Anthony was a first round pick that couldn't even make it on special teams. So
Yeah.
listen, born 3rd round pick, even though we had high expectations from the fact that he's carved out a niche on special teams, enough to keep a veteran player on the practice squad. Because I think
Yeah.
that's one of them. It's a combination between you guarantee a salary if you bring him on before week 1, but then also the fact that he doesn't play special teams and Bond does, and then he goes out and blocks a punt while Gleason, famous for blocking a punt, is in the building. You gotta love the juju, man. Gotta love the juju.
Absolutely. By the way, shout out to Cap. We're going to shout him out real quick. Says Dave was popping the hell out of Henry. Does this spell the dethroning of King Henry? Does he not have the oomph anymore? Or does that just simply speak to how good Demario Davis is that he can stand up Derrick Henry? Because not many people in this league can stand up Derrick Henry.
It argues a combination of both, even though DeMario is, I mean, he's still
He's
older than.
Demario.
Yeah, it's DeMario, but DeMario is also, 35. So it's not like Henry is, 35. But I do think that, running backs, the shelf life, eh, it how much does it say that Tennessee made a concerted effort not only to draft a running back, but they really tried to like balance out Henry's touches a lot today. Like he was not,
Yeah.
25, 30 touches.
Yeah.
They really didn't, want to overuse him. And I think part of that is because you do realize he's an elder statesman as a running back, especially with the style of runner
Yeah, he's
that he is. He
29.
takes a lot of hit. Hey,
And
29.
he
So I
ran the
mean,
ball 350 times last year. 349.
yeah,
So,
yeah. You know that needs to come down. It has to come down. And but I think, listen, if you're gonna Demario Davis 1, King Henry 0. I think
yeah.
that's how you gotta look at it. So
And now King still has some great plays. One, the screenplay for him was, God, at the time it felt like a dagger. Yeah, that 46-yarder he rattled off. But
it was beautiful. But it was also DeMario reading run. When
yeah,
you go back and look at that play, DeMario was like, I know this is a run. I'm going to eat this up. And then Henry leaks out behind him, and there's absolutely nobody there. But the pursuit was very good on that play. But I mean, that's one of those mistakes. And I wouldn't even call it a mistake.
it's just a
Davis played
fantastic play
full
call.
speed. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a good play call. Davis went full speed at it. He trusted what he saw. It wasn't the right thing, and yet, it didn't turn into something more explosive than what it actually was, which I feel like in seasons past, games past, that would have easily been a touchdown, just like the way we started out with a fumble just seemed so saintsy
Well, I do
when
want to
that
give
happened.
a quick little recap of what's happened around the league as we get ready to wrap up our episode here.
Mhm.
Washington beat Arizona 2016. San Francisco, where everybody's what are they going to do? Well, they whooped up on Pittsburgh 30-7. We focus on our NFC
Oh,
teams. Those are going to be the ones that potential wild card contenders. Tampa Bay goes up to Minnesota and wins 20-17. Man, Kirk Cousins should stay off Netflix and stay in the practice room.
oh, let's talk
Jacksonville
about it.
Jacksonville taking down Indy, which I know is all AFC, but I really am looking forward to watching this just because I want to see Richardson. Like I know they lost, but I want to see the Rook, who by the way led Indianapolis in rushing, which kind of a shock. Joe
Kind of
Burrow
what it
got
did.
waxed, bro. Did you see this box score?
No, Bengals got beat that bad.
24-3. Joe Burrow throws 45% no TDs and
Yeah,
not
well, that's
even
what
a.
happens
Woo.
when you miss the entire preseason with what I think he had like a calf injury. So I mean,
But
those were like
still,
preseason.
this is a team. Yeah, and remember we used to talk about this all the time. Week 1 being just an extension of a preseason game,
Yeah.
but still 24-3. Deshaun Watson came out and helped them to win. And then we've got a couple of more for you. Atlanta beats Carolina. Rookie Bryce Young goes 20 for 38, 1 TD, 2 interceptions, and then Desmond Ridder 15 for 18 in a tutty. But that was mostly a game where the Atlanta offense didn't do much. It was more the Atlanta defense actually coming out and making
Right.
things happen. So
How did Ryan Nielsen? So Ryan, you telling me Ryan Nielsen's unit performed pretty? Because I feel like the quarterback. I feel like the starting quarterback was like 15 of 18 for like 65 yards for
yeah,
the majority of the game. Like
I'll put it this
it was
way:
efficient
the Falcons' offense only had 221 yards total,
total.
and
Yeah.
yet they still scored 24 points to the Panthers 10. So
Yeah. Oh well.
yeah,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
couple things went into that, obviously, but put it on there. You can see it in terms of if y'all watching on the screen. Then, of course, for those who missed it, Detroit beat Kansas City 21-20. Which honestly, I agree. I get this an NFC opponent. I should want them to lose, but I actually am kind of rooting for Campbell's squad up there
Of
in
course.
Detroit. So till they play New Orleans, I'm kind of like, damn, that's my boy. I'm loving it for him. Anyway, there's your kind of like around the league. Mike says Henry doesn't have everything just asked May getting the stiff arm. Oh, so he does still have it. Yeah. May did get a heck of a stiff arm.
He sat him down.
Yeah, that was
He sat him down, but I mean, it's just Henry is that it's still. I mean, he might. You can argue or wonder if he lost his burst. He didn't lose his arm length. His arms didn't suddenly lose like 2 or 3 inches.
and he's still
So,
240 pounds. So I mean, that's a big man.
so, yeah, yeah.
Also, I'll admit I'm also watching to see, is Russell Wilson back? So far, the Broncos, it's only in the beginning of the second quarter, but he is 8 for 9, 74 yards, and a TD so far under Sean Payton.
I
So
think Sean Payton is a very good coach. I think time will tell
yeah, I'm
on that.
excited to see that one. So
Yeah, probably catch that on the way out.
and the last Cashmere says Groupie and Headley look like the right choice. They definitely after today. Definitely do after today. I mean, can't really argue with either result, right?
Like groupie head.
Oh,
Did I deadpan that well enough?
you did. Oh my goodness. Oh, and you're right. Let's see who caught that pass for the touchdown. It was little Jordan Humphrey.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Sean
Yeah.
Payton got his guys. All
Sean
right, man. He wild. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up. And as always, appreciate y'all here. Hope y'all enjoy the Saints win. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Elias, dude, huge thanks for coming in. Love that you're here, man. And just let me know where I can email some of that film if you want to watch it. Who dat? God bless everybody. We love you. We appreciate them. Deuces, that's me. That's Elias. You going to do the Batman thing again?
Nah, because I don't even go by Elias anymore. I go by Elias.
Are we pronouncing both L's?
Yeah, we pronouncing both L's now.
I like it. All right, Elias.
Yeah, touche. But yeah, we'll see y'all. We'll see y'all for next week.